prayer. Father, we thank you for our last night's sleep and slumber and how you woke us up on this morning with the activities of our limbs. Oh God, you allow the blood to yet still run warm in our veins. And we thank you for that on today. God, I just pray on today, God, that you will anoint these people who will come across this airways, that they may give us the information that you have given unto them, so that we may be better citizens, better fathers, mothers, sons and daughters, community, families. Oh God, that we may even be a better world just for you. So we give you thanks, we give you praise for these and so many other blessings we ask. In your darling son Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. And we say a pleasant good morning to you, my good friends.
Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning?
All right.
Blessed and highly favored.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. And every day we rise is a great day to be alive. And welcome to the Seven Cities Forums of Hampton Roads presents Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And I'm here with our co-host, Leah Drake Stiff,
Good morning,
Thomas
James.
Chapman, and of course yours truly, James Slim Overton. And we have a special guest this morning with us. But before we get to that, Colonel, you have the mic.
Yes, and so I'm gonna put the disclaimer out here. The views expressed on this show are not of the radio station, but of the host and our guests exclusively. And so now we can continue.
Okay, good morning, Portsmouth Coffee Talk. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to the guest on our show this morning. And actually, when you think about Portsmouth Coffee Talk, I guess he's our boss. So it gives me a great pleasure to introduce none other than Chester B. Chester Benton, a young man from the Truxton community, a young man who is an IC Norcom graduate, and a young man who is the general manager of the Christian Broadcasting Network, covering the stations WBXB, WGPL, WPCE, and WMVA. Welcome, 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 Chester Benton.
Good morning, and how is everybody doing this morning?
Wonderful, thank you.
Wonderful, awesome.
Wonderful to have you here.
Pleasure to be on this show. I listen to the show from time to time, and here at CBC, we now rebrand ourselves as CBC, your #1 Black media network, because as things begin to change and grow in the entertainment and radio and broadcast community, we're doing exactly what you're doing. We're not just concentrating on radio, but we're integrating radio with social media and also our newspaper, The Voice. So we're trying to reach the Black community in as many ways as possible, staying ahead of the curve and changing with the trends.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
And tell us where we can get a copy of The Voice for those who are out there and listening on Facebook Live.
The Voice is a newspaper. It's a monthly newspaper. We put it out once a month. There's several locations that we put it out. One of the newer locations is going to be the restaurant, the Lawrence Brothers restaurant. You'll be able to go in there. When you go in there to pick up your food, you'll be able to get it there. We also have copies at the radio station. We have several churches that The Voice will be put out each month. If you are a business or a church or a convenience store or something like that, and you would like The Voice placed in your location, just give us a call here at 622-4600, 757-622-4600, and we'll make sure that we put a copy of The Voice in your location. It's a very interesting read. We deal with the issues of the Black community, and it's a monthly. We're not trying to compete against the Journal Guide or anything, but we're trying to basically do a lot of entertainment news, a lot of other news that other papers don't, give you an opportunity to receive.
Wonderful, wonderful. And let me just say one thing before Slim and the Colonel get started. The thought of you being on the air this morning has generated a lot of excitement. I've gotten a lot of people who come on my in my message who was talking about, oh, my Chester Benton, what we're going to talk about all of those greats who came, Daddy Jack Holmes and all of the other guys who were on the radio. So people are excited and ready to hear what you have to say about the history of Black radio in our community. I just had to get that out to them because they're still hitting me up about
Okay. Well,
ask them about this
yeah.
one and ask them about that one. So
And Chester, let me start with
Oh,
you because
kinda-
let me start with you, Chester, because Leah mentioned that you grew up in Truxton and playing ball and everything, went to Norcom and played football and track. And I even heard you tried to start a curling team at Norcom, but it didn't work out. But anyway, with doing that and thinking you might be more involved in being an athlete, what got you going as far as going into the DJ area of area? I know you mentioned one time it was Jack Holmes, but what really got you started at a young age? Because you were still at Markham when you were on the radio. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, one thing is that, I think back of how I got into radio, and there's really no clear path. I remember that when I was at Truxton Elementary School, we did a field trip, and one of the field trips was to WRAP radio that was located over in West Norfolk at the time.
yes.
And so when I went into the studio with the class, Jack Holmes pulled this news used to come on something called a teletype.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave it to me. And I think I was probably in the 5th grade, maybe the 6th grade. And he had me to read the news, young man. So I read the news, and that kind of lasted with me. But I never really had a major interest in radio. I wanted to play football. I thought I was going to be a professional football player. And I kept waking up every morning waiting for to be 6'3", 189 pounds, and it never happened. So I had to change my game. When I got over to Norfolk State, I mean, when I was in high school, there was probably 1 or 2 big guys, and I could outrun them. When I got to Norfolk State, there was 100 big guys, and I could not run any of them. So from there, after trying to run back a punt and almost got my whole body crushed, I decided that I would go over to where they had the radio club. So I joined the Norfolk State Radio Club. That was back in my freshman year of college, and I became the president of the radio club. And from there, we helped to get Norfolk State its own radio station. Growing up in Truxton, when we start talking about the legacy of radio announcers, Jack Holmes was a person that lived in Truxton on Truxton Avenue.
That's right.
Scipio Collins was also in Truxton back in that area. Nick Carr was also at that area. And of course, who can forget the legendary King Hot Dog, the great
Hot Dog
person from Truxton. And Bob Jackson actually grew up in Carver's home. So all of my mentors, the people who I looked up to, were from the Truxton area. So that was another thing that led me to say, well, maybe we need another Truxton guy on the radio. When we talk about the of radio in Hampton Roads, Jack Holmes started his career at a radio station called WLOW. And WLOW was a white-owned station, and they only needed what they called their Negro segment. And the Negro segment was sponsored by Sweet Peach Snuff. Ooh. So when he started off at 15 minutes a day, and he would go in and he would do a spiel, because Jack's history, he was an entertainer, he was a singer with big bands, he was in the military. He came from New Jersey to Norfolk, but he was just great entertainer. So at that time, people was dipping Sweet Peach Snuff, put a dip between your cheek and your gum, and I guess it keep you moving all day. And that was sort of like Jack Holmes' slogan. So he would go around from place to place, and he would come on the air for 15 minutes, and he would do his little Sweet Peach Snuff commercial. And that's how he got started. WRAP was the first Black-oriented station. It was started out at 1010 on your radio dial. I mean, 1050 on your radio dial, and it was only 500 watts. And they had a couple of announcers that were on WRAP that they hired. That was before Jack Holmes. And then they brought Jack over because Jack was an entertainer. You know, if we go back to the early days of radio, it was all about being professional. I mean, the guys had voices, they dressed real well.
Yes.
You know, and they spoke because one of the things that we did, you were representing the Black community. And that's something that we don't say now, is that Jack once told me, he said, you're in a special club. And the purpose of this club is to entertain and educate the Black community. And that's what the radio announcers were doing back at those times. But Jack became one of the first radio announcers that were actually was an entertainer. They had a guy named Oliver Allen, who was one of the first announcers at WRAP. He was more of a management style, laid back, but very professional type announcer. And they had a guy named Bob King who had this great voice. They would always talk about Bob King, the guy with the great voice. And so these announcers actually started in radio back in 1953. Jack had already been on, and he was at WLOW, and they brought Jack over, and that's where the history of Black radio began, because Jack was such a great entertainer.
He was the wake-up call. He was the wake-up call for our community.
Well, everybody knew Jack. He would always say, get up from there.
Get up from there.
I love kind of carrying on. And of course, you're late again. If you had to be to work by 7, you're late.
Late again.
And and when people realize that, you know, everybody, if you go and you ask 100 people, what do you know about Jack Holmes? They're going to say that he gave the wrong time. He always gave the wrong time. He would tell you this, and you look at your clock, it would be different. And so I worked with Jack for many years. I worked with him in his last years of radio. And I asked him one time, I said, Jack, do you know that you was given the wrong time all the time? And Jack said, did they get there on time? I said, yeah. He said, that's all that counts.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Chester, you mentioned about you mentioned while you were talking about the radio voice, and Jack Holmes said this himself, that he didn't have the radio voice, like, you know, per se, but it was his personality and what he came across. I remember listening to him promote those gospel shows at Ruffner Junior High. You remember? And along with Leola Dyson. And you talk about Leola Dyson. That was kind of new to have a lady in that position, because at that time most of the announcers were men. Am I correct?
Right. And Leola was amazing. She was what we would call a trailblazer in radio. Leola was our public information director. And if we go back to the early years of radio, Leola had a thing that she called a homemaker's holiday. And Eleanor Roosevelt became good friends of Leola. And Leola Dyson happened to be, when we're talking about in the 1950s, not only Black female, but Black female, to go to New York and negotiate contracts for WRAP to get product. You know, back at the time, there was what we call Negro-oriented product. It was BC headache powder, and of course, mentioned the two-row snuff, and there were all sorts of these little items that we as Black folks purchased. And so Leola would go up to New York. She would travel with the owners to New York, and she would pitch and sell them on the idea of, hey, we're the Black radio station. We reach the black people, and if you're gonna buy Auntie Mammy pancakes and this and that, you need the Black community. So she created an event called a Homemaker's Holiday, and all of these companies would ship food and supplies in, and she would bag them up. And over at the old Norfolk Arena, we would have this big program where, and they're kind of doing it today, where you could come in and actually get free bags of groceries, and all of these items by all of these companies that would gear their product towards the Black consumer would actually come and pick those up, and then the national representatives from those companies would come in. So, and it showed that the spending power of the Black dollar. When people listen to radio, they like the entertainment, they like the jive, they like the music, but the radio is also a business. And I was fortunate enough that even though I had a pretty good radio career, I'm celebrating 50 years, I guess, this month. And
Wow.
I spent 25 years on the air, and I've spent another 25 years in sales management, even though I actually started in radio management as program director after my first 3 years in radio.
Chester, since this is Black History Month, this is an honor to have you here, because you have so much. Just listening to you just for this 5 minutes or 10 minutes now, I'm listening to an oral history that needs to be put down on paper so it can sustain time. And so have you thought about writing a book or doing the videos and talking about or whatever to talk about this oral history? Because you're a walking encyclopedia about what's happening in our past, especially today when we look at the advent of this false theory of CRT, when some of the other folks want to whitewash history and wipe out what you just said.
I have thought about it. I have, my career is so many different ways. I love radio. I understand the history of radio, but I'm also an advocate for my community, Truxton, because when we talk about Black history, for the last 10 years or so, I have concentrated on studying the history of my community and so many great people that grew up in my community, and so many things that the community did to help Black people. And when you start talking about critical race theory, it's amazing from my studies of Truxton history how I found out how there were so many obstacles that were put in place to keep that community from striving. I read about how they made sure, and a lot of people don't think of this, that as you travel down Portsmouth Boulevard, what used to be Key Road, to the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, it was made sure that no Black person would have to pass through a white neighborhood to get to the Naval Shipyard. And all of this stuff is pre-planned. So when you start thinking about how a group of people have sat down and pre-planned things so that we see them, but we don't know them. We don't pay any attention to them, and all of this is pre-planned. But back to your original question, yes, I'm thinking about actually doing a book on two different books, really. One on the Truxton history, and the other on my radio career. One of the things that I am proud of as far as my radio career is that rap music actually started here in Hampton Roads on rap radio. Rap was not the terminology that it is today when rap radio was started. Rap simply meant talk and discussion. It was an African-American slang term meaning talk and discussion. So that's what rap radio was about. But in the mid 80s, I was probably the first to play a full rap record on the radio at WRAP. And I created something called the After School Rap Attack, which was a project that I had to put in because I needed something. I had worked at RAP, I left and went to Wowie. I made Wowie #1, and the owners of RAP asked me to come back. It was Rollins Incorporated, Wayne Rollins, Mr. Rollins' son, through the help of Leola Dyson, said, if we're going to get back on track here at RAP, we need to bring Chester Benton back. So they asked me, what did I need to do? What would I want to come back? And I was happy working at WOW. We didn't really want to go back. And I just created a whole bunch of stuff. I put a hit list together of things I know that they were not going to award me. And I got a phone call 2 days later, said, okay, so you can come back. And I said, wow, what am I going to do? I've taken WowWee to #1. And now I got to go back and find a way to beat myself. So in radio, we talk about target demographics. Our target demographics was 25 to 54 at WowWee. Everybody was buying 25, 54. And I knew that with the things I had put together at WowWee, I couldn't beat 25 to 54. So I decided at that point that I would go after a 13 to 17-year-old market. So when I presented that to my management, they thought I was completely crazy and out of my. Nobody is going to buy a 13 to 17-year-old demo. So I had to look for a template of how I can pitch not only to my local management, but my management in Atlanta, why they should take a station that has been in the Black community for years and turn it to a station that was aiming at a market that they claimed that didn't make money. So in my research, I looked up the template of McDonald's and how McDonald's determined that at a certain time of day, which was afternoon, from the time the kids get out of school until 6 o'clock, that they actually control the radios. Now, we're talking about a time period where the families picked up the kids and the kids were in the cars. And as soon as the kids got in the cars, they would switch their radio. Mm-hmm. Or when they got home from school, it's the one radio house, they would switch that radio. So I started to looking at all of the things that McDonald's had done, and I created a proposal, and I went to Atlanta and I pitched that proposal to the company, and they were excited, and I was just shooting from the hip, about it. But they did so many things to educational programs. At RAP, our rap contests were educational rap contests. Mm-hmm. And before rap got into gangster rap, rap was a way that you could take a kid, take their minds, get them in the library, learn the English language, learn how to rhyme, learn how to write, and all of that. So we did those type of contests. We had a program they call a step up program, which means that when I got artists like the rap artists that they liked, in order for them to get to school, I would have a step up party, which meant that if you got any grade higher than what you got the last time, mm-hmm. you would be able to come to the party. If you had an A and you dropped to a B, you weren't invited. Uh-huh. But if you were a student or D student and you moved up, it would be a step up party. And we brought in people like Run DMC and Mary J. Blige and all of those to the school systems, and that worked out quite well.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Well, you know what, Chester, it's important what you just said. And you know what what I think about is when you talked about the targeted demographics, when you talked about getting the younger folks, and then you have the mid-range demographics that you were working on. But what I see is you targeted young folks, and now if you get that young folks, then I keep them when they get into the next demographics. Mm-hmm. And that was an important piece that you just, in my mind, that you just talked about. And the other thing too is you get to keep the Black dollar throughout the history, throughout one's lifespan, because as you know, the Black dollar does not stay in our community, but maybe 5 seconds after we get it. And so we need to keep that in our community so our communities can grow.
Well, one of the things, I actually retired from radio. I forgot what year it was, but my retirement lasted maybe about a week, maybe 2 weeks. the stations that we currently own, and we not meaning me as the owner, but me as the chief operating officer of the chain, are owned by Katrina Chase. We have a company name. It's under the Christian Broadcasting, but we have changed from Christian Broadcasting now to just CBC, because we not only have Christian Broadcasting, but we have Coastal Broadcasting. We have a newspaper, so we're expanding. One of the things that we see is that there's a new emergence of Black entrepreneurship. The millennium generation, if you go around and you just talk to the people, you'll find that most of the people in the millennium generation, because they're getting what we call second generation money now. You know, when we came up, Leah, we had to make it ourselves. Our parents might have it, but you had to work 2 or 3 jobs to get the money. And because of that, we have a whole generation of Black kids that could go to their parents and make a loan. And those that can go to their parents to make a loan are starting their own business. I was talking to a guy that had a beard cleaning company, and he had the support of his parents. We have so many businesses in social media, and we always had the barber shops, but they're expanding. We had the beauty salons, but they're expanding. But we have the clothing people, that creates, not only purchase their clothes, but design their clothes.
Yes.
So what with CBC, what we're doing is that we're trying to get those people inclusive. And that's why we have so many opportunities for talk programming on 1350 and our other stations, is because we want to let the community know that there are now Black owners. When I was in the club business, there was always a club. They had a Black front guy, but the white owned the club. Now the Black people owning the clubs. We had record stores that you would go in and think they were all Black owned record stores, and you find out there's a white guy that came out of the back. So we see the trend changing, because we have second and third generation money, and that second and third generation money is something that help us to start our own businesses. And then we have a lot of people that combine street knowledge with college knowledge and entrepreneurship, and these businesses are beginning to grow. And that's what we're looking for, as being Black owned and operated, a facility to give these companies a voice.
Hey, Chester, I wanted to kind of get this in, because we're approaching the 7 o'clock hour where we leave the radio station. So, but I want to get this in. And you mentioned about Black-owned radio stations, and then you have Black content radio station. I want you to talk about how important it is for people to support the Black-owned and operated radio stations. Often, and we can go into the people that are running for office. Often they'll come on, when we give them the opportunity to talk. But during that period, during campaign season, when the radio stations look for candidates to pay, to present their platform, they go elsewhere. And you talk about how important it is to support the people.
I'll talk briefly about, but that's one of my pet peeves. The reason that we have programs like Coffee Talk and the other programs that we have on the air at our stations is because I wanted to give the Black community an opportunity to have a voice. And with that voice, I don't charge anybody anything. If I have my host bring them on, they can talk about anything that they want to talk about, run for candidates, do anything you want up to we get to that window. But when we get to that political window, which is 60 days out, we start to looking for it, at least recoup something from some of the people that we're allowed on free all year. And that's why we create different packages so that people can purchase advertising. You got to remember that this is a business. And when you just talk about the light bill for 4 radio stations, you're talking about $15,000 to $20,000 a month. Because not only do we have to keep the lights on at the facility where the announcers are, but we also have transmitter sites. When we talk about playing the music, there are fees that we have to pay BMI and ASCAP, which is the licensing company, to actually afford to play the music. We have to pay companies so that we can play the music. Then you have payroll. Then you have unexpected expenses. So you're talking $75,000, $80,000 a month that you have to make to even break even. And when you start talking about that type of money, when we ask somebody for $200 or $300 or $100, and then we see that they go over to another station that's Black oriented but white owned, that Republican sponsors, they don't want you in there, but you say they got this, we're going to go over there and pay them. Now, I might ask you for $25 a spot, and they fight me, but they go over there and pay $35 and $40 a spot. And the people do not like them. They do not want them over there. They see it only as an opportunity to make money. If you come on the air and you want to talk more than 2 minutes, they cut you off. When you come on with us, we allow you to talk. When we talk about Black History Month, which we're in now, we saluted over 60 people, 60 past and 60 present, 120 people during Black History Month by running our vignettes, by telling people about people that they don't know about. So being Black owned and operated, as we say with CBC, your #1 Black media network, that we are supportive of Black radio and Black entrepreneurship and Black business, because we are a Black business.
Indeed. Now we're at 6:59 now, so we're gonna
Okay. I just want to mention a couple of names right quick, so I won't get.
Don't leave, Chester. Don't leave it, Chester.
Dog, huh?
Don't leave. We stay on.
Okay, I won't.
Okay.
All right. Stay on for another half an hour on Facebook. So I'm just gonna
transition.
make that transition. We want to thank all the listeners on WGPL 1350 AM for listening, and please join us next Monday as we come back with more exciting news on Portsmouth Coffee Talk. We appreciate you. Take care.
Okay, Chester, now you started talking about some of these famous folks we've had on the radio. Go ahead on with it.
Yeah, because, people want to know about radio, and we have had so many great announcers from this area that not only were successful in this area, but they moved on across the country and became successful. One of the greatest ones, and I mentioned his name, is Frank Hallison, King Hot Dog. King Hot Dog started his career here. He was a student at Hampton University, and he went on to go to a station up in DC called Whoop Radio. And at the time, there was a station in DC that was the hottest station in the country, was a station called WOL. And WOL could not be beat. I went to a funeral service for a guy that was a friend of mine up there called Bobby Bennett, who was the Mighty Burner. He was the hottest disc jockey in that area, in the DC market. And I remember them talking about Bobby, talking about nobody could knock down the big OL. And then Frank Hallison, King Hot Dog, came to town. And within 3 months, King Hot Dog had taken over the Washington, D.C. market. Frank also traveled to Los Angeles. He had an opportunity to appear with the great Frankie Crocker, and we often talked about this. And he had a relationship with Wolfman Jack. So they called him Frankie Crocker called him to come to New York, and Wolfman Jack called him to go to Los Angeles at the same time. And because the opportunity and the money was greater in Mexico, out in California, he went there. I also have to talk about the person that brought me in the radio. He called himself the Soul Ranger. And Frank Jimmy Fitley, Soul Ranger Stewart, actually worked for Hot Dog. In fact, in my early years, I used to carry the records for Hot Dog and Soul Ranger. Soul Ranger has worked in a lot of major markets across the country. And he had just the pure knack of of entertaining. I started my career as a writer. I created an episode called "The Legends of the Soul Ranger," and going back to the thing that Leola Dyson did, I was able to get a sponsor, a national sponsor. So we used to go around and talk to people in different communities about who were their local heroes, and we would create stories. I would write and create stories about how Soul Ranger would come in to save the day. We had Nick Carr. Nick Carr was the man with one of the greatest voices that I can think
Yes,
of in
yes.
Hampton, and he did features called Nick Carr and All That Jazz. We had Parisian jock Paris Illy, who is now the general manager of a radio station out in Houston, Texas.
Mhm.
We had Calvin Shakespeare Perkins, who was our Don Cornelius. He has a program that's out in LA right now, where he's still doing media marketing. But his program that he had on WHRO TV was huge with the Get Down people.
Mhm.
Um, just so many, and you know that you're going to miss some. I had Bill Borgens, who was one of the greatest gospel announcers in the country. I had the magnificent Maurice Ward.
Mm.
Uh, we can just go on and on and on and on. The Buddha Brothers, later in life, later in our later years, came to be one of the most popular duos of rap music in the country. H.J. Ellison, who was the beginner, who I hired to do the rap attack, the after school rap attack. His knowledge and his skills and his interviewing skills helped to pull that off, where we would bring in the rappers from all over the country, and they weren't doing that many telephone interviews. So if you want to be on the radio, you had to come here. And HJ was very skilled in communicating with the rappers in their language. It's just so many. Our history is just so rich. And of course, we have to talk about the era of Jack Holmes and Jimmy B and Scipio Collins and all of those guys. That was a completely star merit. And we're talking about a time where when you came into radio, our careers were built on ratings. All right. And you had to be creative and you had to be good to last. If you came on and your ratings dropped, you were dropped.
Mhm.
So the people that we mentioned are people through their creativity and their radio style lasted throughout the years, 5, 10 years. To make it in radio 4 or 5 years, you had to be good.
Mhm.
And work ethic is the most important thing that I learned from Jack Holmes. Jack was my mentor. He personally mentored me every day because I came out of college thinking I knew everything on this planet and if you weren't doing exactly the way I felt it, I would get upset. And it was just bad. It was just ego thing. And Jack sat me down and mentored me every day. And he taught me the value of being a radio announcer. He taught me the value of how to go out and share myself with the community. He taught me how to separate Chester B from Chester Benton. And these are the things that have stuck with me all of my life. And so I have to thank Jack Holmes, this being Black History Month, for him taking the time out and see me in the wrong direction and bringing me back in. I also would like to mention my friend who it's been a year ago today, I think about it, Bobby J, who passed.
Yeah.
And Bob Jackson was one of the most creative announcers around. I worked with him. As a matter of fact, he was on my station, WBXB, in the evening at the time that he passed. And, it's just amazing the things that were in these guys' heads, how creative these announcers could be. I know Pharrell Williams and them say there's something in the water. Well, there was something in the water with these DJs. And if you grew up wanting to be a DJ, whether you want to be a very professional announcer like Johnny Q,
Yes,
or
yes.
you want to be a talker like King Hot Dog or Bobby J, you had your role model. You could pick anywhere from the far right to the far left of where you want to be.
Chester, and as you mentioned, hot dog, I know I had flown to Memphis to visit with some friends, and I woke up, turned my radio on because that was one thing we did back then. You turned your radio on to listen to what was going on.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I heard, "Good morning, Miss Bessie B. I love you wherever you may be." I said, "Lord, Hot Dog is here in Memphis." And
Yeah,
of
he
course
was in.
I had to
Yeah.
call him. And when I realized that he was there, and I called him, and we were able to get together and discuss about the good times we had at WRAP, WHIH, the radio stations back in the day. But also, I need to mention that Alma Dean,
Yeah.
had a program on the radio, and Alma used to invite the students from Norcom High School to come
Hmm.
onto the show to discuss what was happening at Norcom High School. So we were on her show on a weekly basis discussing what was taking place at Norcom High School with the student body. So it added a forum for the young people to share information as well on the radio.
Well, and it goes back to freedom and the freedom of expression. And you don't have that in radio today.
Mm-hmm.
Radio is so consumed by the corporate, the Live Nations, or whatever they call themselves now, the major companies who dictate to you what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And because that, you can't have a program like Almadine or Leola Dyson.
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk about things like Jack Holmes. You can't run a train like King Hot Dog.
Right.
They give you cue cards. What has happened is that white radio or white owners have decided that they know what's best for Black radio. And you get a few Black people that buy into it because of economic gain.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like the overseers. They make sure that you just read your cue card and say what they want you to say. Don't talk about any issues. Don't do anything that will shake up the apple cart. And radio has lost its value to the Black community because
Mm-hmm.
we're not a part of or the leaders of the Black community anymore. We are a part of the Black community, but we're not the leaders of the Black community anymore. And that's why I say I am so glad and so blessed. And the reason that I came out of retirement, because along with Dr. Trina Chase and others, I have this vision that we can return Black radio to the Black community.
Yeah, Chester, I was going to ask, and you said that what is it going to take to regain the Black radio presence in the Black community? And I guess you alluded to that you are working on that and trying to regain that presence back in the Black community.
Well, one of the things that we have to understand that there's change.
Mm-hmm.
And by understanding that there is change, we have to find a way that we can integrate what's going on today with the young kids who are more into the internet and TikTok and all
Mm-hmm.
of this kind of stuff. So we have to create a way that you can take those social media platforms and integrate those social media platforms with radio.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that we have to create and have the kids to understand that when they're on TikTok and those other social media platforms, they're only reaching a certain amount of people at that one time. But suppose you could share that with not the people from all over the world, but you could share that with the audience in your community. Say that every time you open the mic at radio, you're reaching 50 to 75,000 people. All right. Internet, social media, all of this is good. But right now at our peak, we might be at 200 people, 300 people. So because you see those 200 or 300 people, you say, wow, we're doing great.
Mm-hmm.
But just one flip of that microphone switch on the radio, you're reaching 50,000, 60, 100,000 people that's in your neighborhood that know you. And you don't have to do anything to reach them. There's no cost. There's no going up and down your phone. There's no this. All you do is punch that radio on and turn it to your favorite station, and you reach those people. So if you deliver messages that are inclusive, that bring them to the radio, that have them get involved. When you talk about social issues and you bring that parent or that child or that teacher on, you're reaching people with just the push of one button and not pushing a whole lot of buttons or going through the things that you have to go through to get on a Facebook or your telephone. And you're keying in on your particular target audience. And that's what we have to get kids to understand. And that's what radio have to do, is create programs that will make them interested in coming back to the radio instead of going to all these other social media outlets. And you do that by integrating them, together, just like you're doing now. You're doing radio, but you also have your social media platform. Mm-hmm. You won't realize that when you go on the radio, you have so many people that are going to follow you on your social media platform. So it has to be an integration. And we have to have people that understand that trends changes. You have to stay on top of your game.
Yeah.
And if you don't stay on top of your game, you're going to get lost, and we have to be able to communicate to the kids in their language. And that's what rap music was all about. Mm-hmm. When I was doing my research on rap music, one of the things that I found out is that what rap music was kids telling stories about themselves, mm-hmm. that in a language that other kids understood. I had a consultant once tell me when I was programming rap, he said, if you like it, there's something wrong with it because it's not meant for you. Mm. He said, this is meant for 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. So mm-hmm. if you're out there saying, yeah, I love it, go back, revisit it.
You're going in the wrong direction.
16 or 17-year-old. And so that's the same thing with any media. If you look at that target demographic, you find out what that target demographic like, and you super serve your target demographic. And that's how you will be successful in creating programs and programming a radio station. Mm-hmm.
Chester, I got a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and this one's a multifaceted since I got my turn to ask you this question.
Okay.
So you talked about could you talk about the number of 100% pure Black owned radio stations versus ones that are fronted that exist? And then, so I think that your company is a sole proprietorship, I believe.
It's a sole proprietorship.
All right. And then, so has the owner thought about going and raising more capital to grow faster through selling stock investments, going on the stock market, and bringing in that piece? And then what is the overall viewership numbers?
Okay. Well, we can't give you overall numbers because that company, which is Nielsen now, that used to be Arbitron, controls those numbers. Now, the way that the national companies buy, they basically buy what they call the top 3 or top 4 stations. The average cost to be a subscriber for Nielsen or Arbitron is between $250,000 and $500,000 per year, depending on what your ratings are. And because why should we pay $250,000, $300,000 to get on a rating book when we know that we don't have the coverage to mm-hmm. be in the top 3 or 4? So we basically gear towards community involvement, loyal listenership, and return business. Mm-hmm. We serve our Black client so that we don't have to compete at $250,000 or $300,000 to get a national buy, and that we might not even get that national buy mm-hmm. because of who we are. Mm-hmm. As far as selling stock, once you sell stock, it gets complicated. As we go back and I talk about the young lady Kathy Hughes that's in that started her station up in Washington, who is probably the largest Black owner of radio stations in the country. Well, you don't determine who buy your stock. Mm-hmm. So what is that once you went on the open market and started selling stock, the company that owns Clear Channel or whatever they call themselves now, they came in and purchased about 30 or 40% of their stock. So once they determine about 30 or 40% of your stock, you got plenty of money in your pocket, but all of your goals and things are gone because you have to answer to your stockholders.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's where that problem comes in. If you're going to do something that you feel in your heart and it is your own project, then you have to find a way to make that work so that your dream can come true. But once you open it up to stockholders, you don't know who they are. They might say, yeah, we buy pro-black, but now once they own a certain percentage of your stock and somebody else owns a certain percentage of your stock, then your control, even though you might be the majority owner, your control is going out of the window. Now, that might change at some point, but to get to a point where we fulfill our dream, we'll probably stay independent for a minute.
Okay, good. And I guess my last question would be, or the next question would be, have you thought about getting into the satellite?
Into what now?
Satellite radio.
Satellite radio is really something that's been out a while, but it's never been really successful because you have to pay a fee. And a lot of people, you go back and you look at with all the other different types of entertainment venues out with social media and everything, the amount of time spent listening, which is one of the things that we use in measuring, it's maybe 25 to 30 minutes a day because people get it when they're going to work or coming home. People don't come home now and sit around the fireplace and listen to the radio.
Right.
So why should you pay a subscription for a satellite radio when you're only going to spend 15 to 20 minutes a day actually listening to it? Now, a lot of people like to just switch around and listen to see what's going on everywhere else, but you can do that on the internet now for free. So satellite radio was a great dream, but I don't think the satellite radio is going to be able to sustain in the future because time spent listening and listening habits are something that people are not into as far as radio is concerned. I think they're going to have to go back and revisit that. I mean, now for people that want to just hear sports all the time, yeah. For people that want to just hear classical music all the time, yeah. But when you have hip hop and all of these type of musics that people are into on a daily basis, including gospel, people, they don't want to search around. They want to go to their hometown radio station, listen to their hometown radio station, find out what's happening in their community, and they can get that for free.
Yeah, just as we talk about the Black history, and we talked a little bit before we came on air, or you talked about the difference when we had the radio station where it was a lot of Black-owned radio station, and we have to mention Willis Broadcasting, which was very prevalent in this area, his radio stations and all up and down the South. But now we don't have as many Black-owned and operated stations, so it makes us even more important to the Black community because we are few in number. How do you think we're going to be able to sustain that kind of presence in our community?
Well, Bishop Willis was a great man and a great entrepreneur. And when you think about what he created, it's almost unbelievable. In 1974, Bishop Willis purchased WOWI, which was a rock station, which was an FM station, and he purchased WPCE, which is 1400. And one of the things is that the two stations that we have, the 1400, which is WPCE, that was the old WHIH. Yeah, and there was the old WHIH. The 1350 that you're on now, that was the last station that was WRAP. All right. Going back to Bishop Willis purchased 54 radio stations. I'm not talking about stock owners. I'm not talking about major companies. I'm not talking about major white backers' money. I'm talking about Black-owned, Black community money. He purchased 50 some radio stations,
Mhm.
and he put them in every major market. We're talking Memphis, we're talking Newark, New Jersey, we're talking Dallas, we're talking St. Louis. He purchased all of these off of his grit, grind, knowledge, and ability as an entrepreneur. So that is a feat that nobody, I feel, will ever be able to do again. And he did it because he had a gift of gab. He was a great horse trader, as they used to say,
Mhm.
and he had a vision, and he hadn't let anything stop that vision.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So our goal is not to try to get 50 some stations, but we want to basically make sure that the Hampton Roads community understand the importance of having a home. You know,
Mhm.
it's nice to visit a lot of places, but there's certain things that you can do at home that you can't do at other places. When you at home, you can take your shoes off and you can relax and you can talk about what you want to talk about. When you're in somebody else's house, you can't do that.
You're right.
You know, one of the stories that I'll tell, and I'll tell right quick, is that during the election, we had a lot of the Black local clients going over to the white-owned station buying airtime instead of buying airtime with us. And then they would get mad and talk about when they went over how they had so many Trump signs and Trump posters, and the people were wearing Trump t-shirts and Trump hats around the office, but yet they took their money there
Mm.
and they didn't feel comfortable there. But they felt that the white guy's bread was better than our bread, and they went over there. Then they want to come back to us and complain. You know, you don't feel comfortable in somebody else's house when you know that you're pushing for the empowerment of the Black community, and they're pushing for the demise of the Black community, but yet you give them your money. It's got to be something wrong with that picture. And
Mhm.
then to go out after that and brag about how well they treated you
How
when
poor, how poorly they treated you.
Trump had.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the things that upsets me, is that I talk to these people every day, and well, they're on FM. It don't matter. We're going to be on FM. It took us 5 years after we purchased the FM station
Mhm.
to finally come around to get our license. They got theirs in 20 minutes.
Wow.
They went on with the FM translators. We've been fighting for 5 years, 5 hard years. And we paid close to $85,000-$90,000 just to even get that.
Mm.
And I don't even know if they even paid. So, it's can you afford the lawyer? Do you have the right contacts with the FCC? I mean, everything on paper looked good, but as I know, that paper is just what you see.
Mhm.
It's the and if you can afford the white lawyer that can take you behind some closed doors or between some things to get you done quicker, you can do that. But if you don't, you got to go to the real road, and the real
Mhm.
road is tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wish people would, and we'll keep, relaying that message. I wish people would understand the responsibility and the dedication that Black-owned radio stations like CBC and what we try to do here on Portsmouth Coffee Talk is share the information with our communities and make sure they are getting the right message. And this is a way for us to control the narrative.
Mhm.
It's so many venues out here that are spurring the wrong message out and we're sitting there listening to it. So
Mhm.
we have to make sure we continue to support the people who support you. So,
Well,
that's our spirit.
a day and age where we have to support Black business, but we have to go back to the Black church too,
Mhm.
because at one time the Black church was sort of the central point where we would get our education, where we would learn about things that were going on in the Black community, and we had pastors and people that were concerned about the Black community. We have to go back now and look at the different government programs that are put into place where churches are able to get funds from the state and the federal government. And a lot of pastors are afraid to tell their congregation the truth in fear that they might not be able to get that government money. So that's why it's very important that as we grow as a Black community, that we have to learn where our independence are. We have to learn where we should stop, what money was good money, because all money is not good money, what programs that we should do, and how we can serve our community. You know, we talk about the gun violence and all of these kids. When you start looking at, they shot like 2 kids yesterday, 14, 15 years old. When we were coming up, every church had a Boy Scout or a girl. All right. And you all know that when you're in that age, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, that you want to be important. And so you get in gangs and things so that you could get your reps, so that you can be important. But suppose you could do that playing sports. Suppose you could do that in the Boy Scouts. But suppose you do that in dance classes and dance clubs. Suppose you do that in book clubs. You know, if we had the churches and the community to establish more of these type of programs to give kids an opportunity to grow in that transition between a kid and an adult, we would cut down on crime. I tell anybody that if I couldn't run, I would have been in jail, because my ability to run and my ability for people to understand that I was fast and give me that same credibility that I could have got on the corner for sticking up the store. You know, because everybody at that tender age between 13 and 17 want to be important. And we have to allow them more opportunities to find out. And as long as we don't, that we're going to have that problem. Because I tell them, if the parents in the community don't get them, the streets are going to get them. And when the streets get you, there's no turning around. You know, you're going to rob that store because you want to be a part of that game. You know what I'm saying? You're going to hang out and you're going to do drugs because that is cool. And you don't want the people to say that you're not cool. So, but cool could be in the Boy Scouts going up to be a you know, cool could be being the quarterback of a football team. Cool could be sitting on the bench beside James at a basketball game.
You hit it right on the head, Chester.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, you hit it on the head.
Yeah, I was real cool, man. I was, I was the bench guy, and cool could be being on the debate team,
That's right.
Cool could be being in the orchestra. Cool could be being on the golf team. Cool could be, a lot of things except out there doing the wrong things. And you were right, Chester, about the Boy Scouts, because everybody I knew coming up was in some troop. Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts. Cub Scouts, we had den mothers. Boy Scouts, we had the troop leaders. And, to wear that uniform and marching parades, that gave us something to do. And I don't even see Boy Scouts anymore. Are they still in existence?
Yeah, they're still in existence, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And Leah has a program that she started back up to
25 years ago, James. 25 years ago. And still working with the children of the children who went through Sankofa now.
And also, we have to be good examples for those people. And sometimes we don't see that in our leaders, showing good examples in public.
Exactly.
And how can that pass down to our young folks when we're acting a fool in public? That's just my spill on that. But anyway, Chester, we're winding down now. But are there any last words? I mean, thanks for coming on, and we're going to have you back because the history of Black radio and what's going on. We want to be able to keep up what's going on at CBC, make sure we spread the word about all the good things that are happening there, especially going to FM, and it's going to be something that's going to expand the listenership, I believe, of the
Yeah.
station.
Well,
Of course.
I like to do is I like to tell everybody thank you for supporting me over my many years in radio, and I would like for you to take some time and listen to our station, CBC, your number one Black media network. As we learn and grow, we're going to make sure that the Black community is inclusive in all of our plans and all of our programming. And if you have suggestions for programming, if you have people that you think should be recognized, anything that you feel that you need to help the Black community grow, we're open. Our phone number is 757-622-4600. If I'm not available, which most of the time I'm not, you can leave a message and I will make sure that myself or somebody will get back in touch with you. This is a dream. We're building this dream and we want to see the Black community. You know, it's bad when you say we'd like to see the Black community go back to where it used to be. We know that there's so many injustices that happen the way that it used to be. But in reality, the spirits and the souls of the Black people, we feel that that needs to go back to what it used to be. We have family unity, community unity, understanding of our history. And I often tell people, they say, well, what drives you? And I have to go back to the old Truxton, we love you with all our hearts.
I just sang it for Jim just a few minutes ago. Oh, Truxton, we love you with all our hearts. You help us to grow each day.
And that instilled in us that you can't be average.
That's right.
You have to be better than. Not one time better, not two times better, but 4 and 5 times better than the next guy if you want to succeed, because there are obstacles that are going to get where you want to go. But if you say that I know that these obstacles are there, and in order for me to get across this finish line, I have to go over all those obstacles, and to do that, I have to be better, 5 times, 10 times better, you know. And the other thing that it instilled in me is read. Every day, read something 4, 5, 6 times a day, because no take that information that's in your head from you. And if we can find a way to get that information back to the kids that are coming up, you know, then you can grow. I was the other day, and I'm going to cut off, is that going back, and I don't know why I got this Truxton pride on my mind, but when I think about my first opportunity of public speaking was a play called Sunny or Sunnyside. You ever heard of that one, Leah? It was at elementary school, and I had a speaking role in Sunny or Sunnyside, and the audience loved it. And I said, well, maybe that might be out in radio. I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, Chester, one last thing, and you know, Portsmouth Coffee Talk is glad to be a part of the CBC radio family. And mention some of the other programming we have. Some other talk radio shows on sister station WPCE. And
okay, we have the Crusade for Christ. Yeah, we have the Crusade for Christ program with Carlos Howard that comes on 3 days a week now. And that gives the politicians and the community leaders an opportunity to come on and talk about the issues all over Hampton Roads. We have a community talk program that's geared specifically to the peninsula because, and that comes on Wednesdays. On Tuesday, we have Mr. Ed Joyner. And the program was actually started by SIVA, and it still comes on now. It's not sponsored by SIVA anymore, but it gives people that have musical careers or musical interests an opportunity to come on and showcase their talents. And then we have a host of other programs that are on a daily basis. We have the Crusade for Christ original program with Alvin Rooks, who's also a Truxton guy, that every day at 4 o'clock, from 4 o'clock until 5 o'clock. So, and we have so many other opportunities where a person could come on. If you got something to talk about, call us. We can put you on for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, even an hour, and the price is reasonable. So we're one of the few radio stations out there that still give you an opportunity at a reasonable rate to come in, buy some time, and create your own program and talk about what you want to talk about, what's laid on your heart to present to the community.
Yeah, don't forget the FYI. That's on, I believe 9:30. FYI.
Yeah,
On,
FYI,
9:30.
Brother
Yolanda
Ed,
and
actually,
Ed.
yeah,
Yeah.
and he has a very good program.
Mhm.
Okay.
3 days a week. Okay,
All
well,
right.
we thank you. And any other comments or questions from the co-host?
No,
I'd just like to thank Chester for coming on this morning. It was so informative, and I'm in awe.
thank you.
Chester, my Truxton partner, my Norcom partner, my radio station partner. I am just so happy to have you on, and the wealth of knowledge that you have. We cannot even justify it in the time frame that we are offered here at the radio station. We do have to have you back on because not only your history of the radio, the Black radio in Portsmouth, but also your history of the Truxton era. We really need to have you back on to talk about both of those entities again. And I just want to say thank you so very much. Thank you for this opportunity you've given me as well to be a part of Portsmouth Coffee Talk. So we just want to say thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you have done for our community for over 50 years. And I'm glad you're still working.
Thank you, and thank you all for your support.
All right, and Portsmouth Coffee Talk is here for our voice,
our community,
and our future.
And we have to get Chester a Portsmouth Coffee Talk cup.
I got a duck in my cup.
Yeah, I see that. Oh.
Yeah,
thanks everyone.
That's my
appreciate
cup. Oh my cup. Yeah, I really coffee talk cup.
We're gonna have to get you one.
All right.
Get you one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so very much.
Take care, everybody. And thank you. Have a great day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.